Splatoon 3 is already shaping up to be one of the flagship releases when it comes to the Nintendo Switch's 2022 lineup when it launches on September 9th. In this video, I'm going to try to tackle the couple of changes that I think Nintendo needs to do to take this franchise truly to the next level. And it's no big surprise that the first one comes in the form of an online multiplayer feature that I think has been there since the first two games, but at this point in time it's just kind of become cumbersome and it needs to go away. And that's the fact that we still are dealing with limited map rotations, where essentially they give us 2 to 3 maps to choose from as random rotations every couple of hours. Now, this was a noble idea in the first game, heck, maybe even in the second game when we got it a few years ago, but it's ultimately a little bit of a hindrance now because there's just so many maps available in the game. We do know that Splatoon 3 is not only going to be introducing new maps to the franchise, but it's certainly also going to bring back some of the old classics as well. So we know that there's about 30 to 40 really cool maps already in this franchise, and that's not including the Splatfest variant maps, which are a whole heck of a lot of fun to begin with on their very own rights. So ultimately, it doesn't really help the game to have a 2 to 3 map rotation every couple of hours. It's become a little bit of a hindrance. It's become cumbersome when you're essentially rotating between the same 2 to 3 maps every couple of matches, when maybe that is the only time window you have to play the game, and it's just really not all that fun. Now, this could be good for a limited time event. This could be a good idea even for a specific game mode. Certain ranked modes as well could certainly benefit from a small map rotation every few hours, but I think for most casual players who are playing Splatoon, and let's be fair, the overwhelming majority of people who do play Splatoon are trying to play it casually. They're not trying to be the best of the best here. I think they would benefit the most from just having kind of like all the maps available at one go. I'm a big fan of the Mario Kart kind of like choose a map at the end of a round type of situation where you could just get a vote on a specific map and then it just randomly chooses one. I'm a big fan of that. So maybe they could choose to do that into the future, or ultimately at the end of the day just kind of make all the maps available in the rotation. If you create a lobby, maybe you could just choose which maps you want to have available there, and we can go from there forward. But again, limiting maps for a certain few hours, it's just not fun. It's never been fun, and at the end of the day, I do hope that this feature kind of just goes away at the end of the day. The other feature that they need to add to this game is, of course, loadout changes in the middle of a match. Now, a lot of people say that the only reason why they haven't necessarily introduced this is because it's going to be game breaking due to balance. I'm not necessarily quite sure how that actually works out, since you could actually go into any match with any specific loadout. You're not being match made because you have 4 sniper users or 4 dualies users or anything like that. It's just kind of random. Again, unless you're playing ranked, this probably would be beneficial to most players who just simply want to test out different loadouts in the middle of a match. Now, if you die and you choose a different loadout, then that's completely fine. Maybe not changing in the fly, having 2 loadouts so you can swap back and forth like other shooters have done already. Maybe that's a little bit over the top, but if you have a couple of loadouts preset and they let you choose from that in the middle of the match, I think it would be easy, no problem, one of the easiest features to implement, and at the end of the day, people would probably be extremely happy to finally have that option available. The third and final thing that I do want to certainly touch upon is the tick rate. Now, this is something that a lot of people confuse when it comes to frame rates, and that's not necessarily the same thing. Frame rates is essentially, of course, how many frames you're being displayed onto your device, your television, your monitor, or even the Nintendo Switch tablet screen on its own per second. That is how many pictures essentially are being shown per second. Usually would be 60. When we're talking about tick rate, however, it has to do with your online connectivity to the servers or to other players, P2P, peer-to-peer. So essentially what you have here when it comes to Splatoon, I believe the tick rate was about 30, if I want to say, or 18, something extremely low that most shooters do not do. And that was like resulting in a lot of trade-offs. That means you shoot someone, they shoot you, and the information is like so far behind. The packets sent back and forth are so far behind or so far apart that you are dealing with trade-offs. A lot of people just, I kill you, you kill me, because the game is not registering that the shot you shot after me where I shot you first and I killed you, you shot me. Therefore, like your shot would have never hit me because you would have never had a chance to fire it. So because I killed you and then your shot came afterwards, even though you shouldn't have, you ended up killing me at the same time. That doesn't happen when you have a game with faster tick rates like most shooters do in other consoles. So this is something that Nintendo has had issues with for quite a while. Now, of course, for them to actually address this, it would actually be meaning addressing their online infrastructure and actually addressing the fact that these games don't necessarily are catered to the hardcore of shooters. But I think fixing trade-offs with a better tick rate, a faster tick rate, would certainly go a long way. Again, tick rate is not the same as frame rates. I hope I explained that well, but it is something that they certainly need to look at. Faster tick rate will certainly help just about everyone playing the game, and so everything feels a little bit more responsive at the end of the day. Ultimately, when it comes to the single player experience, I don't really have any big quarrels, only because the single player experience has always been just kind of so unique and kind of out there on their very own. They are calling the single player story in Splatoon 3 the return of the mammalians, which is going to have its very own implications as to the lore of this game world to begin with, most likely the surface, and what does that have to do with which those who came before the Inklings. So, you know, there's a whole situation when it comes to the lore there. So I usually never really have any big quarrels when it comes to the single player experience, only because it's just so unique and so interesting, especially if you care about the world building aspect. One of the things that I do hope that they address, however, is the customizations whenever you're playing like the solo experience. Usually you have your character just kind of looking with the preset loadout that they give you, and you don't necessarily get to do much with that. Hopefully, kind of like the online experience where you could just dress up your character however you want. That is one of the things that they give you now access to in the offline experience, so you can have that as well. We also know that the co-op experience is coming back as well, so we are not necessarily going to be missing out much from there. I do hope that they end up expanding Salmon Run to something bigger as well. It's kind of like always been its very own game mode, although from what they've shown so far, it just kind of seemed like more of an iteration of what we already had before. I'm hoping that they showcase something a little bit extra, so it just doesn't necessarily feel like it's just the same thing. And the last thing that I would mention when it comes to Salmon Run is also removing the time limiter experience from that. Just have Salmon Run available at all times. Having it available every couple of hours, every couple of days, is just, again, silly. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. Just have it ready, available there. People are going to grind it if they're going to grind it, and they're not going to grind it if they don't feel like it. So just have it available at all times, and just, you know, get rid of those time limiters. That's one of my biggest complaints when it comes to this franchise, and one of the reasons why I ended up stopped playing Splatoon 2, because I never really got a chance to see all the maps in Splatoon 2, because some of the maps would just be available at weird hours for me that I was just simply not going to log in and play. So let's just make available all the maps available. You know, whichever maps they end up adding in, I have no problem with that whatsoever. Just make them available at all times so we can play them whenever we desire. But that's about all the real changes that I want to see when it comes to Splatoon 3 that I really think are going to push this franchise to another level. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.